Imagine a man in a proud village who never showed his hands. From childhood into manhood, he kept them hidden beneath gloves at gatherings, in the market, even before the elders. The people whispered, "Is he cursed? Is he blessed? Or is he hiding something the ancestors themselves cannot forgive?" For years, no one dared to ask. But on the day of his wedding, when custom demanded bare hands to seal his vows, the secret he had buried could no longer stay hidden. What the village saw that day changed everything. To understand what happened on that fateful day, we must return to the beginning, when whispers first surrounded him, and the village started to question the price of his wealth. Because in every community there are stories that don't add up. And when a man hides his hands from the world, sometimes it is not just vanity, it is a warning. This is the story of a groom, his hidden gloves, and the truth that no blessing could cover. His name was Shahid, and he was not an ordinary man in the village. He was rich, far richer than anyone his age had ever been. His compound was painted white and stood so tall it made other houses look like huts. At night, his electric lights shone so bright that even the moon seemed jealous. He drove cars that no one else in the community could afford, shiny machines that roared loudly and made children run after them in excitement. He owned plots of land, businesses in the city, and cattle that never seemed to fall sick. Each time he appeared in public, he wore fine clothes, always ironed crisp, always new. His shoes shone as if polished with mirrors, and always, his hands were hidden in gloves, sometimes black leather, sometimes brown, but never bare. At every festival, Shahid gave more than anyone else. Bags of rice, cartons of oil, crates of drinks, envelopes of money to the youth and widows. He paid school fees for children who were not his own, and he donated generously to the church. The elders praised him and called him a blessing. They said the gods had smiled upon him. The youth envied him and prayed that one day they too would rise as he had risen. Mothers pointed him out to their sons and said, "Learn from Shahid. Work hard, and you will prosper like him." But beneath the praise and admiration, there was always a question hiding like a snake in the grass. How had Shahid, who only a few years ago was like every other struggling young man, suddenly become so wealthy? And what was it about his hands that made him so determined to keep them hidden? Amara, the young woman who loved him, did not care for such whispers. She defended him whenever her friends brought up the gloves. "You people are jealous," she would say firmly. "Is it not better to marry a man who provides than to listen to idle tongues? So he wears gloves. Does that stop him from being kind? Does it stop him from being generous?" Her friends shook their heads, but Amara stood her ground. To her, love was trust, and Shahid gave her everything she asked for. He was gentle with her. He spoiled her with gifts, and he made her feel like the most fortunate woman in the village. When he asked for her hand in marriage, she agreed without hesitation, despite the quiet warnings that followed her everywhere she went. For not everyone believed Shahid's wealth was pure. One evening, an old man was overheard saying, "No wealth comes without a story. And when a man hides his hands, you must ask what those hands have done." His wealth commanded respect, and his temper, though rarely seen, was sharp enough to silence anyone who tried to challenge him. One market day, a small boy playing without fear tried to grab Shahid's hand. Perhaps the boy wanted to see the gloves up close. Perhaps he only wanted to play. But Shahid pulled back with such force and shouted at the child, his voice so harsh and his eyes so fierce that the boy burst into tears and ran back to his mother. The crowd fell silent. They stared, but no one spoke. Shahid adjusted his gloves quickly and walked away, his steps heavy with anger. That day, the whispers grew stronger, carried from the market into homes and compounds. Amara noticed too. That night, lying beside him, she asked softly, "My husband-to-be, why do you always wear gloves? Can you not remove them, even for me?" Shahid turned to her with a faint smile and said, "It is nothing but scars from an old injury. Would you still love me if my hands were ugly?" Amara, eager to show her devotion, replied, "Yes, I would love you no matter what." But in her heart unease began to grow. She had never seen even the tips of his fingers, and his sudden reaction to the child haunted her thoughts. Rumors spread like dry season fire. Some said Shahid had once traveled to the city for weeks, and when he returned, he was suddenly rich. Others claimed he had been seen near the edge of the forest on strange nights, carrying things that did not look ordinary. A neighbor swore he once spotted Shahid at dawn, walking back from the direction of a shrine with a bag slung over his shoulder. None of this was spoken to his face, for fear of his wealth and the silence it demanded, but behind closed doors, the story of Shahid's gloves was told again and again, each time more frightening than before. Amara tried to push aside the whispers, but her own eyes began to betray her. One night, as Shahid slept beside her, she noticed that one glove had loosened at the wrist. The leather had shifted, revealing a sliver of his skin. What she saw made her freeze where she lay. His skin was dark, not the natural dark of a man's hand, but the blackened darkness of something burnt. Lines cut deep into the flesh like markings carved by fire or etched by something unnatural. Amara's breath caught in her throat. She pulled her gaze away quickly, her body trembling. She said nothing, but from that night on, her heart was no longer at peace. It beat with love still, but it also beat with fear, for she had seen something that confirmed what the whispers had always warned. Shahid's hands carried a secret, and no glove could cover it forever. The story of Shahid's gloves did not die. The more he gave, the more people whispered. Even his wealth, instead of silencing suspicion, only fed it. People asked themselves, how could a man who was once as poor as the rest now live like a king? Those who dared to answer would lean in close and lower their voices, for no one wanted their words to reach his ears. They said he did not find this wealth through hard work. He went somewhere. He met someone. He made an agreement that no honest man would make. Amara tried to fight these whispers. She loved him, and love is stubborn. But love cannot blind the eyes forever. Each time she looked at his gloves, especially when they made that soft creak as he adjusted them, her heart stirred with unease. One evening she asked again, "Shahid, the villagers talk. They say things that trouble me. Tell me truly, why do you always cover your hands?" He smiled, but this time his smile was thin, and his eyes did not match it. "My hands are ugly," he said. "If you saw them, you would no longer see me the same way." Amara reached for him and replied, "I would still love you." But inside, her stomach tightened because she remembered the glimpse she had seen when the glove slipped. That had not looked like an ordinary scar. One afternoon, a child wandered into Shahid's compound while he was watering his flowers. Thinking no one was watching, he removed his gloves for a moment to flex his hands. The child, too young to understand fear, stood staring from behind the fence. When Shahid turned and saw the child's wide eyes, he rushed forward, pulled on his gloves, and hissed, "Leave here. Never return." The boy ran home shaking, and when his mother pressed him, he said through tears, "His hands are not normal." The mother warned him never to repeat such words in public, but by nightfall, the story had already begun to spread through the village like wind. The elders, who were old enough to remember other tales of sudden wealth, began to talk among themselves. One said, "I have seen such things before. A man disappears, comes back rich, but his wealth is tied to blood. He cannot eat in peace, he cannot sleep in peace, and he hides the signs on his body. The truth always comes out no matter how many gloves cover it." Amara's own dreams began to trouble her. She woke one night trembling, telling herself it was only a dream, but the image stayed with her. In her dream, she had seen Shahid standing before her, holding out his bare hands. They dripped with fresh blood, and as he reached for her, she heard voices chanting words she could not understand. She had woken in a cold sweat, her heart racing. Shahid slept beside her soundly, his gloves still on, and she stared at him with fear she tried to swallow. As preparations for the wedding began, the village priest paid them a visit. He looked at Shahid with sharp eyes and asked, "My son, as you prepare to take a wife, will you come openly before the ancestors? For no union can be blessed if there is secrecy." Shahid forced a laugh and said, "There is no secrecy. I am a man like every other." But the priest did not smile. He left that day with a heavy face, and later he told the elders, "Something about this man does not sit well with me." Even the villagers began to see cracks in his mask. At a gathering, a young man teased loudly, "Maybe Shahid's gloves are made of gold, since everything else he owns shines like money." The crowd laughed, but Shahid's face hardened. His voice was sharp when he replied, "Be careful with your tongue." His anger silenced the laughter, and once again people looked at one another with unease. Stories resurfaced from years past. A woman swore she had seen Shahid on a dark night, carrying a bundle into the forest, never to be seen again. Another man said he once spotted him returning from the direction of a shrine at dawn, his clothes dusty, his eyes fierce. These stories were told in corners, never in public, but the fear behind them was real. Amara's doubts grew heavier with each day. She still loved him, but it was a love poisoned by suspicion. At night, she would glance at his gloves, wondering what they truly hid. One evening, after he had fallen asleep, she could no longer resist. She reached quietly, her hand trembling as she touched the edge of his glove. Slowly she pulled, and as the leather shifted, she saw more than before. His skin was dark and cracked, with strange lines that looked carved not by accident, but by ritual. The markings twisted across his palm like a language she could not read, and for a moment she thought she saw the lines pulse as if alive. Her gasp escaped her before she could stop it. Shahid stirred, and quickly she let go, pretending to turn in her sleep. Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might wake him. She lay there with her eyes open until dawn, the image of those hands burning in her mind. From that night, she could not see him the same. She smiled when he spoke, she laughed at his jokes, but inside her spirit trembled. She began to wonder whether she had given her heart to a man whose wealth came not from blessings, but from blood. And though she said nothing, she knew the day would come when those gloves could no longer remain on his hands. The wedding day dawned bright, and from the first cockcrow the village was alive with excitement. Women fetched water early, men carried chairs and canopies, and children ran about shouting with joy. Drummers warmed their skins, dancers oiled their bodies, and even strangers from neighboring villages arrived to see the great celebration. Shahid's wealth had turned the wedding into a festival. Goats and cows were slaughtered, palm wine flowed like a river, and the aroma of food filled the air so thickly it clung to the skin. It was a day to remember, a day people believed would seal Shahid's legacy as the most prosperous young man of his time. Yet beneath the music and the laughter, there was a heaviness in the air, a question pressing against every chest. For everyone knew that tradition demanded bare hands before the ancestors, and everyone knew Shahid had never shown his hands. The bride, Amara, was adorned in coral beads and a wrapper of bright red. She was beautiful, but her eyes betrayed the storm within her. As women praised her beauty and sang her name, her mind was elsewhere. She thought of the night she had pulled back his glove and seen markings no human should carry. Her heart trembled, but she could not speak, for the wedding day was already here, and the path could not be turned back. Shahid himself was regal, his agbada flowing, his cap perfectly balanced. His smile stretched wide, but it was strained, for he too knew the moment of truth was near. When the time for the vows came, the drummers fell silent. The village priest stepped forward, his staff in hand, his voice deep. Marriage is not just between man and woman, he declared. It is between their ancestors, their people, and the gods that watch unseen. To seal this bond, the hands of bride and groom must meet openly. No cloth, no covering, no shadow must remain between them. What is hidden must be revealed, for the union must stand in truth. The people murmured, nodding. All eyes turned to Shahid. He shifted uneasily. His gloves still covered his hands, black leather polished until it gleamed in the sun. He forced a laugh, his voice carrying, "Father, must I shame myself before my people? My hands carry scars. They are not fit for such a day." The priest shook his head slowly, his eyes sharp. "The ancestors are not shamed by scars, only by lies. If your hands are clean, show them. If they are not, then let the people know who they are blessing this day." A hush fell over the crowd. Even the children stilled, waiting. Amara's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to run, yet her feet remained planted. Shahid's smile faltered, and sweat gathered on his brow. At last, under the weight of every staring eye, he raised his hands. Slowly he tugged at the leather. The gloves slid down, and what was revealed made the crowd erupt in gasps. His hands were blackened, not by fire, but by something deeper, something unnatural. Strange carvings twisted across his skin like snakes, glowing faintly as though alive. The markings pulsed in rhythm, as if blood itself was speaking through them. Women screamed and covered their eyes. Men stepped back in fear. Children began to cry, clinging to their mothers. The priest's staff struck the ground. These are not the hands of a man blessed by the gods. These are the hands of ritual, the hands of blood. His voice rang like thunder. You fed your life with sacrifice, and now your shame is bare before the people. Amara swayed, her strength leaving her. She looked at Shahid and saw not the man she had loved, but the truth she had feared. His wealth had not come from hard work, nor from blessings. It had been bought with the blood of innocence sealed into his very flesh. Shahid's eyes blazed with fury. He lifted his cursed hands, their markings glowing brighter, and shouted at the people. You call me cursed now, but was I cursed when you ate my food? Was I cursed when you took my gifts, when you drank my wine and called me blessed? You all knew, but you chose silence because my wealth fed your bellies. Now you condemn me because you see what you always feared to admit. His voice shook the air, but no one answered him. The crowd only stared, their faces twisted with fear and shame. Mothers dragged their children away. Elders spat on the ground and shook their heads. The drummers would not lift their sticks. The gloves lay on the earth where he had dropped them, empty and useless. Shahid stood with his hands bare, exposed not only before his bride, but before the entire community. His wealth could no longer cover the truth. His name, once sung with praise, would now be whispered with dread. That night, the feast food went cold, untouched. The music never returned. People went home quickly, afraid of what they had seen, and in the days that followed, the story of the groom who hid his hands spread far beyond the village. They told it in markets, at riverbanks, at moonlight gatherings. They said, "Do not marry wealth you cannot explain. Do not trust a man who hides his hands, for what he hides may destroy you." Mothers warned their daughters, fathers warned their sons, and Shahid's name became a lesson, not a blessing. And now I ask you, what do you think of this story? Was Shahid only a victim of his own greed, or were the villagers also guilty for looking away as long as they enjoyed his wealth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you are watching from, and do not forget to subscribe for more stories like this one.